Fast-paced, riveting, and to the point. Welcome to Week in One, the show that brings you the top news stories and interviews featured on ENCA over the past 7 days. I'm Abigail Visagie. Let's get straight into a few of this week's headlines. South Africa's most wanted fugitives, Facebook rapist Thabo Bester and his partner in crime, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, are back on South African soil. The city of Tshwane without power for several days. Western Cape police are yet to arrest a man suspected of murder, rape and sexual assault involving 4 teenage girls. It's a story that had South Africans glued to their screens. The escape, capture, and finally the deportation of rapist and murderer Thabo Bester and his partner in crime, Nandipha Magudumana. Senior reporter Slindelo Masekane shows us how the pair fled their Hyde Park, Johannesburg hideout and ended up in Tanzania.
After escaping from prison in May 2022, Thabo Bester stays in one of the properties he and Dr. Nandipha leased in Coleraine, Johannesburg. Dr. Nandipha then moves her parents out of the Hyde Park mansion to Coleraine, and Bester moves into the mansion. Reports begin to surface that Bester didn't die in prison. Investigations by law enforcement reveal Bester using a number of aliases to open bank accounts. Those accounts are frozen. On the 11th of January 2023, Bester and Dr. Nandipha flee from their Hyde Park mansion for the Coleraine property. They realize they need to move to an unknown location. They check into the Hyde Park Southern Sun with Dr. Nandipha's 2 children from the 4th until the 14th of March. On the 15th of March, Bester and Dr. Nandipha move to a B&B. On the 16th of March, Dr. Nandipha drops her children off at school. The school contacts their father to collect them after she fails to fetch them. Bester and Dr. Nandipha flee the country via the Beitbridge border. Track and trace teams follow them into Bulawayo on the 17th of March. Between the 18th and 19th of March, they drive up to Zambia, moving towards Tanzania. On the 8th of April, the pair are apprehended in Arusha, Tanzania, with a Mozambican accomplice. They have several passports on them. Sources have confirmed that Dr. Nandipha was in possession of 2 passports belonging to an associate, Dr. Mereganjani, also known as Dr. Pashi. Dr. Pashi's foundation released a statement this week saying it's learned that her identity may have been stolen and it's seeking legal advice. ENCA has seen an affidavit deposed by Dr. Pashi on the 27th of March where she claims she gave her passport to Dr. Nandipha and Bester to facilitate a business trip to the USA. So how long will it take before the pair and their accomplice are deported back to South Africa?
We'll have to look at the extradition agreement between South Africa and Tanzania. But before they are brought back, they might want to charge them according to the immigration laws for entering the country without the proper channels.
Dr. Nandipha's father and a former G4S security employee have been implicated in Bester's escape and charged. Law enforcement has not ruled out the possibility of more arrests. Slindelo Masekane, Johannesburg.
Senohe Matswara, an ex-G4S employee, appeared in court this week alongside Zolile Sekeleni, the father of Dr. Nandipha. They've been charged for allegedly aiding Bester's escape from the Mangaung Correctional Facility. ENCA senior journalist Aviwe Mtila looks at how G4S fits into the big picture of this prison break.
38-year-old Senohe Matswara is the former G4S prison warder who made his first appearance at the Bloemfontein Magistrate Court alongside Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's father. He was arrested on Saturday in Bloemfontein, accused of being in cahoots with Thabo Bester and assisting him in his elaborate prison escape on the 3rd of May last year. Matswara was fired by G4S in September, but not before boasting about a brand new car before Bester's escape.
His alibi didn't match because what really happened is his version was that he was off duty, but indeed he was at work. And besides, there are money transactions, especially in purchasing that particular vehicle, which he couldn't explain. So the DPPs and your NPA, together with the police, they've made a decision that he's actually number one suspect that needs to be charged from the side of the prison.
A post-mortem signed on 4 May 2022, a day after the staged prison cell fire, showed that the remains found in the cell didn't belong to Bester and that the person was already dead before the fire. An affidavit signed by multinational security company G4S on the 5th of May declared that Thabo Bester had died in custody.
You can see that there's a lot of cover-ups whereby the prison itself has got CCTV cameras, but they were switched off. So, and you know, to ban a particular body, you know, with a body, we've seen even with the stillborn babies, you need enormous fire. So they had enough time. They've burned this body with enough, maybe petrol, for instance. But mind you, there was a lot of inmates that have written even to the high-ranking officials in the subs, alerting them of the alleged escape.
G4S has declined to comment and is set to appear before Parliament on Wednesday. Aviwem Tila, Cape Town.
And finally, the moment the country has been waiting for. South Africa's most wanted fugitives are back in the country. Bester and Magudumana were deported from Tanzania and arrived in the early hours of Thursday morning. ENCA's Lendelo Masekane was there.
So it's just after 4 a.m. in the morning. What you see in front of you is a charter plane that's landing at Lanseria International Airport. Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipha have officially landed back in the country. Their charter flight, had actually left South Africa at around 8 p.m. last night. That is on a Wednesday night. The charter flight landed in Tanzania just after midnight, picked up Bester as well as Dr. Nandipha, and landed back in South Africa just after 4 a.m. Now we have a convoy of security officials, correctional services officials. Now this is a high security operation. Dr. Nandipha is being walked into the car. She is back in South Africa. A number of arrests are also taking place in the country. All those who took part in the escape plan, who were implicated, are being rounded up by law enforcement officials. Now, we know that this process began in earnest about a week ago when a delegation from South Africa made its way to Tanzania to begin the process of deportation. Now, it looks as though those talks were successful, and the duo, Bester and Nandipha, have been successfully brought back into the country. Now, the Mozambican national, it seems, is still in Tanzania, and we are expecting a briefing later on today from the Justice Cluster as to the way forward. Slindelo Masigane, Johannesburg.
Coming up, we take a look at some of the big interviews done by our anchors this week. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Abigail Visagie. Now this week, G4S finally appeared before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Justice to answer for Bester's escape from prison last year. Let's recap.
Neither G4S nor MCC have made any findings or statements regarding the identity of the body, as this is the sole responsibility of the authorities. On the 2nd of February 2023, G4S was informed by JIX of a possible escape, and as I mentioned, this was the first time that we were shown the DNA report, a report that was dated mid-2022.
During Wednesday's Portfolio Committee meeting, it was revealed that the police were aware of discrepancies about his apparent death months ago, but did nothing about it. Aviwem Tila spoke to the National Police Commissioner, Hani Masemola.
According to the evidence given by G4S, it seems like you knew about that person not being Thabo Bester, the one that was in flames in the cell, and it seems like you knew the DNA. How soon did you know, and why was this kept mum?
Well, we are investigating the case, and we are still investigating. Despite the DNA, there was a lot of verification that we had to do as the police in terms of interrogation of relatives and both sides and so on. So, yes.
Where is that body now? The one that was in the cell that was purported to be Thabo Bester?
It's at the state mortuary. Remember, there was a court case with the so-called doctor where we were fighting over the body. We went high court. We won to take the body. Hence, we kept it at the state mortuary. We are in the process to identify as to who this person is.
And as I mentioned again, it seems like, you knew last year already, earliest indication in July when that DNA was out. Why was all of this kept mum? Why did it need journalists from ground up to break the story before you could come forward as a police?
We don't have to go out and say whatever, but all what was important for us was to verify, to go on investigation, verify a lot of other factors. Remember, there were various parties that were adamant that it is not Thabo Bester is not alive. He is the one that burned there. There was quite a lot of various role players that maintained that stand, and we had to do our thorough investigation and do quite a lot of work that we have done in the process of verifying as to who is this.
The return to South Africa of Bester and Magudumana has again raised questions about the wanted Gupta brothers. A possible route to getting the Guptas back to South Africa would be to involve Interpol. Legal expert Selby Makoto says that if another red notice is issued, any country can carry out their arrest. He spoke to anchor Dan Moyane.
So, Selby, I mean, you've got the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, you've got the NPA, they're the ones who would apply for extradition, and there would be a treaty, obviously, governing the extradition terms between the two countries. Are we clearer today about what were the main reasons for the UAE to decline the request for extradition in terms of the existing legal instruments?
No, we are not clear. Actually, we are more confused than we are supposed to be clear. And at first, I think we need to be mindful of the fact that both South Africa and the United Arab Emirates are parties to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which mandates the parties or the states concerned to interact, to liaise, to help each other in terms of information exchange, in terms of the processing of extradition, and any other related matter in as far as the mutual legal assistance is concerned. Over and above, South Africa and the UAE ratified the treaty in 2018. One would have expected that in addition to the diplomatic sound as they are, dating back to 1994, one would have expected that the process of communication should have been as smooth as possible. There should have been transparency. But in the circumstances, we are equally confused. And there are only two options that I think South Africa needs to do now.
So what can South Africa? What can South Africa do? What can they actually do? I mean, what are those options?
Either to appeal the judgment and make a compelling reasons, and that to extradite the Gupta brothers is in the best interest of the country, that they will not be subjected to any human rights violation, and that their extradition is to the assistance of the courts. The other option will be to start the extradition process from the scratch, because as we have seen, there is an attempt to split the charges. There is a charge of money laundering, which now the UAE argues that it has jurisdiction, it can entertain that, and that there were some technicalities in as far as the NPA submissions are concerned. I think there was an attempt to replace one document by the other. Those are just technical issues. But over and above that, those are the two available options that South Africa can do at this stage, if ever the matter has to be brought to finality.
There is evidence to prove that those behind the murder of Chris Hani 30 years ago were never brought to justice. That's according to struggle icon and former cabinet minister Ronnie Kasrils. Janusz Walush was convicted of the 1993 assassination, with a National Party MP charged as a conspirator for supplying the gun. Kasrils spoke to ENCA anchor Sally Burdett.
Do you believe, I mean, we know that Janusz Wallus went to prison. Obviously, he received parole recently. Clive Derby-Lewis was also convicted of being involved in planning the assassination. Do you believe that's where it ended, in just the two of them in this crazy plot to create such destruction? Or do you believe, as the Hani family does, there's more that we haven't heard?
Well, the Communist Party, for example, to answer you in the first place, together with the family, is calling for an inquest and has been doing so for the last 30 years, which is why they opposed the parole, first of all, Derby-Lewis himself. We are well aware that his wife, Gay, was clearly involved. So it went further than the two of them. And I say this about her because there was evidence in relation to lists that were drawn up by a journalist from the then Citizen who had provided her with a list, and there were 20 people on that list. Madiba was number 1, Joe Slovo was number 2, Chris Hani was number 3. So, of course, in terms of going into that background, and what was going on in the country, the intention of the dark forces who were dead against any form of change, that clearly was where one suspected there would be that conspiracy. And I would think that it's quite feasible that that's the case, and one is pointing a finger against those forces. I want to say this, that the diversion into, well, was it in the ANC and certain figures there who were wary of the radicalism of Chris Hani, I think that's very mischievous, and particularly at the time, I saw that as a diversion.
Stay tuned to Week in One. Coming up, parts of the Tshwane Metro go without power for several days. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Abigail Visagie. The management of a game reserve in the Eastern Cape is on high alert. They fear that prisoners who escaped from a Makanda correctional facility could be behind a spate of rhino poaching in the area. Lalibela Game Reserve Management has told ENCA of at least 16 poaching incidents in the province since the beginning of the year. Reporter Ronald Masinda has the story.
3 rhino poachers were spotted by the Lalibela Game Reserve's anti-poaching team during the early hours of Monday morning. 2 managed to escape, but 1 was not so lucky. The Lalibela's Game Reserve's anti-poaching team says a dog played an instrumental role in the recapturing of Abraham Moyana.
We put the dog on the track. She picked up the scent. We tracked and then apprehended one of the suspects. She's had numerous arrests in her career, but this is her first one on this property.
It's an extremely lucrative profession, and these guys are exceptionally good at it. And, you know, it takes tremendous resources to catch these guys and actually put them in jail. And to then have them escape is just, it's a very, very bitter pill for people to swallow. So, yes, I think they're going to keep at it until they're apprehended and finally put away for good.
The rearrest of another escaped prisoner close to Makanda has raised more concerns for residents who fear that there could be more rhino poachers lurking near the area.
The guy that is rearrested now, Moyane, can be assured that those 2 escaped are still the same team that he escaped with in Makanda prison. So it shows clearly those people are around, but something that is concerning, police are so quiet about this issue. Even Minister of Police is so quiet about this issue. Also, Minister of Correctional Service. We didn't even hear a word by now.
Eastern Cape Police say Moyana has been charged with escaping from prison, with his case postponed to the 3rd of May for further investigations. Ronald Masinda, outside Makanda.
Mamelodi residents were fuming over the lack of an estimated time that power would be restored this week, but the Tshwane mayor and electricity minister said they were doing all they could. This after electricity pylons collapsed on the N4, plunging the east of Tshwane into darkness. ENCA's Pulele Tweety-Jones has more.
Power has been restored in parts of Tshwane. However, some areas are still in the dark as a result of this pylon here, which collapsed along the N4 East Freeway between Solomon Mahlangu and Simon Vermeulen Road. One area which has been hard hit is Mamelodi. Residents and business owners here are furious.
So now electric. I've been running this business for 3 to 4 years, I think so. So these things of electricity, it just affected me a lot because as you can see, I've thrown away the foods. I've spent like 5,000 to buy these foods.
Not only was the city of Tshwane plunged into darkness, but this incident led to the loss of 300 megawatts of power in a country challenged by an energy crisis. The mayor still has no clear indication of when electricity will be restored. However, he says there are plans to use monopoles to restore power.
Eskom is assisting us with the sourcing of the single, what do you call a single? Monopoles. They are assisting us, but we're also speaking to the manufacturer of the monopole. So there isn't just one supplier, and the focus is to complete the work as soon as possible. But I'd be very careful of any timelines.
The Minister of Electricity says there are plans to protect the electricity infrastructure.
We do accept that in the short term, something has to be done to protect the assets and also make sure that communities are safe, because as you can imagine, the whole of Mamelodi is dark, and that's likely going to be the situation for some time until Executive Mayor Brand comes back. So there has to be significant reinforcement with regards to security, making sure that we protect communities and assets. And of course, I'll elevate it to Minister Klele as I live here, and that's a commitment.
The mayor says the next step will be to engage businesses that have been impacted. Pule Tweety-Jones in Tshwane.
Gender-based violence has once again reared its hideous head, this time in the Western Cape. Police are yet to arrest a man suspected of murder, rape and sexual assault involving 4 teenage girls.
What was meant to be a happy get-together with 4 teenage girls ended in tragedy. 2 alleged rapes, sexual assault and a murder. The 14-year-old twins say they invited their 2 friends, aged 13 and 15, for a sleepover. Their mother's brother allegedly gave them alcohol to drink as well as a hookah pipe to smoke. The next morning, one of the friends, Timna Kuze, was found dead in the house.
I was in Eastern Cape, so I got a call at 9 o'clock Saturday.
The mother then called a friend to immediately go to the house, where she found the 13-year-old's lifeless body.
They drink Haria whiskey and the cider Benin. And then the girls is drinking and then sitting in front. The Timna is sleeping early, so the girls is taking the fleece to cover the Timna.
They left her with her uncle in the lounge while they went to the bedroom to sleep.
At night, the first person noticed there's no panty and the pajamas. And then it's waking for the another girls. After that, it's waking also another girls also no panty and pajamas. Another one only have a panty, no shorts.
The girls said when they checked on Timna in the morning, she was not moving and was cold. They moved her to the bedroom and covered her with blankets. The suspect's sister says she can't believe her brother would do something like this.
My brother was very sweet. Even he didn't smoke. Yes, you have it. Sometimes you can drink the alcohol. I don't know what's happening really.
It was actually shocking. That is one. But our work is to follow up cases like this of GBV and to make sure that justice is done.
Timna's friends had a memorial service to say their last goodbyes to her before she was laid to rest in the Eastern Cape on the weekend. Aisha Ismail, Cape Town.
And that brings to an end this week's episode of Week in One. From myself and the team, have a fantastic weekend. Take care.